Sup shredders. If you're watching this on the day that this video comes out, then you're watching it on my birthday. I've just turned 32. It's kind of crazy to think that I'm well into my 30s now. Still haven't come to terms with the fact that I'm getting older. At this point in time, I'm probably busy enjoying my long weekend and having a great time relaxing and being grateful for the life that I have. This video is a substitute for my regular weekly live stream. Doing these Saturday live streams is something that I'm usually really consistent with, and I typically really enjoy myself chatting with y'all and talking about music, but as it's my birthday, I wanted to have the afternoon off work. I treat these live streams like a job because I'm a professional music reviewer. So yeah, I figured I'd take the afternoon off work as it's my birthday. Nothing personal, I just need some me time, you know? To vibe and unwind. I didn't want to become burnt out like I was in 2022. Last year I was so tired all the time. It was a dumpster fire. And 2023 has been so much better in so many different ways. However, I also wanted to make sure that the people that support this channel and watch my content also have something to tide them over till the Khalil Fong album review next weekend. And so hence this. It's something I've been discussing for a while, and here it is, hopefully for your enjoyment. It's also my first big video in this format. I consider it to be something a little bit different to what I've released in the past, and at least at the time of scripting this video, I'm proud of it. It's cool to try and evolve as a content creator. I don't just want to do review reaction videos all my life. This is a change for me and it is exciting. In regards to the platform that I'm releasing this video on, YouTube is also now supporting a bigger push for watch time, preferring bigger videos over shorter ones. So yeah, there's various reasons for why I'm putting this video out now. It has English subtitles. This is because I scripted it. It's also my first big scripted video. It's nice to just be able to talk from a script for a change. I think that it makes me sound more intelligent and awake. A video, of this size needs to be concise and to the point, so I didn't want to half-ass it. It does not have Chinese subtitles. Most of this is because genuinely I don't have a spare $200 USD to spend on them at the moment. It may even cost more than that. I also wanted this to be a surprise, especially as I have gathered that many gave up on me even releasing this video at all. I could add Chinese subtitles at a later date, depending on interest from viewers, but not now when I'm kind of broke. Don't get me wrong, I'm not homeless or bankrupt, it's just that it's the period between school terms when no lesson fees are coming in, and I don't have a lot of spare disposable income to spend on subtitles. I may add Chinese subtitles later, I don't know. If I do, I hope that they're accurate because otherwise it'll be a complete waste of time. Anyways, enough rambling, I'm gonna get to the video in a moment, but to those of you who thought this video would never come out, I get it. I forgive myself for the delay, and I forgive you for losing patience. And to those of you who kept the faith, thank you. Either way, enjoy the video. Jay Chou is a musician that I've come to respect and appreciate over the last couple of years. He's a prolific musician with 15 studio albums under his belt, alongside countless singles, live recordings, and output across various other forms of audiovisual media. Clearly, he is someone who is nowadays comfortable with his own style, his own brand, and his own presence in the international music industry. As of the time that I'm scripting this video, I reviewed 12 of his albums. For the most part, it's been a fun ride. That said, I've always wanted to do a deeper dive into both Jay and his music. Given how little I know about Jay as a person, and given that I don't want to potentially infer anything about him outside of what I can personally verify, it's probably better for me to just focus on his music. Truth be told, this discography-based approach is something that I like to continue with a lot of other musicians. So why is Jay going first? Well, it's just that Jay inspired this series. I saw his discography and went, why not do all of it? And then I couldn't see anyone else that did it, at least on YouTube, so yeah, he's first on the list. We won't be going through all 15 studio albums in one video. There are several reasons for this. The first being that doing all 15 albums in one viewing would be a leviathan effort, and I'm personally unsure of how many people would want to watch a 5-album review, let alone a 15-album one. I don't want to push my luck too far. I figured that it's better to stick with the concept of a trilogy, albums 1 to 5, 6 to 10, and 11 to 15. That way we can potentially get albums 6 to 10 done by Nushka's birthday, August 8th, and 11 to 15 done for Christmas. Although that'll also depend on whether we get to 10k subscribers before the end of 2023. We'll definitely do at least 2 of these, though, but let's get through this one first. Without further ado, it's probably worth actually getting into the ranking portion of the video itself. For today, we need to assess and examine the first 5 albums from Jay Chou. They are 1. Jay, 2. Fantasy, 3. The 8 Dimensions, 4. Ye Hui Mei, and 5. Common Jasmine Orange. As some of you may remember, I did some live streams in the middle of 2023 scoring the different Jay Chou albums on various criteria from 1 to 10. This information is what I will be using for this video. I wanted to go for a more calculated style of critique as opposed to the generalized version like with the album live streams that we usually do on Saturdays. There was a generally positive response to these more intensely analytical sections, and this is part of why I'm doing this. If you think about it, if I want to do videos like this, and if people like the concept, may as well go for it, eh? So we have the following areas to consider: vocals, theme, rhythm, coloration, structure, ornamentation, performance, production, and finally feels, how it made me feel. And then there's the overall score. The lowest score is 1 and the highest is 10. 1 is the worst song imaginable, 10 is a perfect song with no flaws whatsoever. I would also love to do a lyric section, however with no way of attaining perfect English translations of every single song that we'll be listening through. I know that it's going to be unfair to compare tracks that have varying qualities of translation. So this lyric section is something that I'll use for bands that sing, rap, growl, perform in English. These criteria will be what I stick with throughout the rest of these SP ranking videos, simply because it seems to make sense to keep the grading style consistent. So without further ado, let's get started with album number 1, Jay. Track number 1, Adorable Woman. It's the first track on the album. Woo! There's a beautiful intro with the helicopter foley and the string section and a really fresh original theme. Interesting filtered drum kit in the background. The vocals are nice and varied, and it seems like Jay really wants it. He wants this first track to pop off, especially with these interesting melodies that dance within the scale shapes. The guitar playing in the midsection is sensational. I really enjoyed the flamenco feel to it. There is an interesting nostalgic reverb to the strings and keys, and there's extra harmonies in the second half of the track that really elevate it, with the side pan vocals and the constant unison notes. There are all these extra vocal overdubs, more so towards the end of the song, that continue to retain engagement. The key change in the final chorus is welcome, especially after so much compositional development. There is so much variety, it's a lovely first impression. Track number 2, Perfectionism. Interesting phone call intro, followed by a sassy piano line. Nice panning of the various elements within the stereo field. Interesting choice of the filtered vocal overdubs in the intro. A smooth transition into the verse with the bass heavy drum kit, coupled with the overall animosity to the instrumental theme. The falsettos are great with the staging of the harmonies on left and right. There are sub-layers of keys too, and lovely little vibrato legato tails on the vocal lines. Without lyrics, I'm unsure of the reason for a lot of the voiced foley, but it's nonetheless pleasant to listen to. There's a great synth insert within the midsection, lots of love for that. The piano is phenomenal in its intricacy. I didn't really hear the technical intensity of it until the scripting stage of this video. I especially like the late stage in the interlude, where the piano kind of trills and dances across the speakers. There's more of the aforementioned filtered talking until the outro section, where we have a final hook line from Jay that fills the track out well. The song ends with interesting electronic drum chops, and I'm satisfied with this track as well. Track number 3, Starry Mood. Okay, so we have a car to start things. The overall theme, performed afterwards, sounds adorable, but there's a weird mid-resonance within the frequency spectrum that I dislike, and I think it's within the guitar tone. It's a bit rough sounding, if I'm honest. Outside of this, the overall harmony, the chord progressions, and the drum groove sound sweet, and the vocal style suits the overall mood. The guitar work is fine, but why have they panned the individual takes like this? The sung oohs are cute as a counterpoint to the more restrained main vocals, but the style definitely appeals to a certain audience. It's a wonderful little ditty and very sweet. The vocals are stronger here than in track 2 in my opinion, and Jay seems more comfortable in his vocal range. I like the variance in vocal phrasing, but there's less ornamentation because in my opinion this is to match a composition that is arguably more conservative. The jazzy inclusions and extensions in the harmonies later on are stunning, the rim shots on the drums are excellent, and there's a lot to appreciate here, especially with a generous allowance for dynamic range. The bass is rolling in the deep, and with appropriate sub-bass resonance, and overall it's definitely a solid single. Unfortunately, there is a noticeable strain that remains regardless of the delivery. The use of head voice is currently not kind to Jay Chou. It's great that he explores the fretboard at the end. 3 for 3. Track number 4, Wife. I love the neutrality of the tone within the intro section at least, with these guitar parts. I think there's some suspended chords within the harmony. The choice to go for 808s and the drums like that with the accented vocals, I don't like the energy there. It's almost like we don't trust the listener to be satisfied with a competent backing and a solid vocal performance. I love the previous 3 tracks. The flow into the falsetto is pretty, but the vocals are almost too widely panned to enjoy. They poke your ears if you're wearing headphones at least. There are fantastic rhythms across percussion and string parts, with a great unison with the guitar and kicks, and that funky lift in the last half of the chorus is awesome. It's more of a song for musicians when compared to his previous 3 tracks. It doesn't really sound like he's catering to the people that prefer his more traditional ballads. Those tremolo-picked guitar parts in the solo section are fantastic. So much attention to detail, little Easter eggs to enjoy. The panning in the second chorus is transcendent and the vocals are raw yet effective, with a lack of effect soaking, making the performance seem more believable. I'm currently 50-50 on the rapping overdubs at the end. I think that they could have used more bass and definition. However, this is my favorite track so far. Track number 5, Basketball Match. I have to hand it to Jay. The use of the sounds at the beginning of the track with the bouncing of the ball really add to the atmosphere of it all and make it more cinematic. It continues with an interesting sounding organ, the drum kit with clicky snares, and if I'm honest, I was not a massive fan of how the synth sequences were mixed, sculpted, or presented. I wish they hadn't been there at all. The drums are almost a little too active and they don't gel well with the softness of the vocals. Initially during the live review I couldn't stand the combination of elements within this arrangement because I couldn't find a common connection. Why are there such weird voicings in phone calls? It's almost too experimental, although I think it's great that Jay is trying new things and not sticking within the ballad box. However, even with time to re-listen and configure the script, the synthy parts and the breathing bits still don't make sense to me. The rapping in the interlude is fine, but why is that section so short? I can't figure out how the synths relate to basketball. I really don't enjoy the sound of the pan breathing inserts. In terms of positives, the guitars with the constant arpeggiating of the harmonies and the offbeat 4-note key melody in the hook parts sounded great. This song was confusing to me, but I respect Jay for putting it out. Track 6, Black Humor. Okay, so we're starting things off like a traditional piano ballad. It's very much a squeaky clean single, but Jay's vocals suit this format better than some of the other songs in this album, to the softness of the mid-range matching the fragility of the piano parts. There's some lovely stuff going on with the vocal melodies and tail exploration, alongside the 7th extensions on the keys. In this piece, his head voice is atypically transcendent, and he sits so well with the vocal fry and the unconventional and unpredictable chord progressions within the accompaniment. It's great to see him just sitting well with his vibrato. He's finally found his happy place within his vocals, especially with that wondrous falsetto around the 2-minute mark. The composition itself is engaging enough with these 2 ingredients, but then to have the drums and bass come in as tangible and complementary additions is wonderful. Tracks like this are why he became famous. The string flutters in the final third are transcendent. The final chorus performance here from Jay was absolutely unbelievable when compared to previous tracks, at least in regards to technique and confidence, and the development of the drum parts with the ride bells and tom fills is wonderful. I have nothing but love for the effort put in here. This is, for me, a new favorite track from Jay Chou, especially with the stunning orchestral outro with the surrounding string section. Damn near flawless. Track 7, Istanbul. So there's a lovely synth here in the intro instantiating the main theme with those plucked strings, the bright, gentle guitar work, and the crisp 16th note groove on the drums. The vocals suit the overall texture of the harmony as well. There's a fascinating hi-hat rhythm here that's ghost noted between open hits, with plenty of dynamic range to performance, no filler. The beltry and the transitions from verse to bridge sounds wonderful. The change harmonically into the chorus is fine, and the call and response between main and backing vocals is great. The synth lead is so pretty as a continued anchoring point within the composition, but I'm feeling a sense of disconnection with the way that the head voice from Jay, the falsettos, that they're being presented here, because I don't think that this is helping the song or supporting harmony. The rim shots in the second verse pop out nicely. After the rinse and repeat of the second verse and bridge, I felt that there needed to be an extra lead on top of the final chorus outside of vocal layers. It's fine to have the catchy melody, but in my opinion, and in regards to minimalism and other interesting lead elements, this song is too dependent on Jay to carry it. It was a classy decision to finish on a fade out, a good track in my opinion, but not a great one. Track number 8, Ancient Indian Turtle Dove. There's great sound design in the intro with the galloping horses and the newscaster. There's also some cool concepts with some colorful guitar parts and synth sounds. Excellent use of the hip-hop jazzy drums and the turntablism with some country motifs inserted on these strings with slide guitar. The vocals sound so chill and confident. He's in his element, something that I have typically always enjoyed from Jay as a singer, but isn't as common as I would like. The use of the organ as a sub-layer is wonderful, and I cannot understate the depth it gives these tracks with those bluesy licks. This is easily one of the most creative tracks on the album, both from a compositional and production perspective. I'm not a massive fan of the choice of wide pan vocals in some parts, but it's still tolerable because of how intriguing everything else is. The range of Jay throughout this track, with his singing a mixture of conversational tones, is fantastic. He sounds like he's having so much fun. The technically illustrious key solo is invigorating alongside the drum and bass breakbeats that I would never have expected in a track on this album. The brass samples on the sides and a yeehaw and other cowboy elements make this so enjoyable to listen to. There's also clapping sounds, other people shouting, and I feel as if I'm missing context here. But again, it's lively and exciting, and I appreciate that regardless of whether or not I can understand the words or context. As mentioned, in Black Humor, he's found his vocal range. It's really comfortable throughout this track, so experimental and well worth the 5-minute playtime. The finesse and the charisma is a vibe, and it's a track that I've learnt to appreciate more and more over time. Tornado, track number 9. To start things off, we have a jingly drum kit with a piano accompaniment with a warbly low-end synth and gentle vocals. It's cool to have a sense of tonal cohesion between the various elements. Everything sounds fairly neutral, especially when contrasted with Ancient Indian Turtle Dove. The piano motif in particular sounds really friendly and vibrant even with the reverb tails. The dragged hi-hats and occasional laser synths don't even really distract from the ambience. It's just really somber and chill. That little synth there in the mid-low end is really quaint during the bridge section. I think that there's a lot of power in how flat the entrance to the chorus is. It allows you to hear all of the various ingredients in the mix all the more clearly. An honorable mention to the triplet clean harmony in the chorus, although I keep forgetting that this track exists outside of reviews, which isn't really a great sign. I guess that I must just not connect the first and second half of the track. There is a melodic, harmonic minor section in the interlude starting with the orchestral drum crescendo and Arabic strings, and while I enjoyed this part exclusive to everything else, if I'm honest without knowing the lyrics, I have no idea why it would be stapled to or sandwiched between the rest of the arrangement. Props to the bass guitar though, it is so round and resonant. Vocally, it's reasonably explorative, great choir vocals at the end. I just didn't really feel anything from it aside from meh. There are other songs on this album which impacted me more, which basically makes the lower score a bit subjective. That's it, and if you're interested, feel free to go check out the spreadsheet in the description of this video for more of a breakdown on the scoring rubric. Track 10, Clock in Opposite Direction. So we made it, last track of the album. To kick things off, we have a lovely flow with the piano that somehow sounds more intimate than what we've had previously. I don't really like the instant tonal transition after the brief piano intro, with the use of the Moog synth and the drums. I don't get why that is paired with the piano, And in general, there seems to be a weirdness with this mix, and it's a shame because, yeah, at the time of scripting the review, and with it coming through the speakers, the mix, at least in the early stage, sounds totally fine. It may just be through headphones or something weird is occurring, but hey. The vocals are par for the course of most of the rest of the album. The range, musically and coloration-wise, is great, and the vocals are full of life. The tension in the bridge is fantastic, and the lift into the chorus is just as pleasurable. There's attempts at extra oomph with the singing, but it's almost like they're too soft in the hook, like Misty or something. In retrospect, I think this comes down to a lack of dynamic range within the mix mastering of the track, coupled with an inability for Jay to really pull the true power out of his pipes at this point in his career. On the plus side, great job on the guitar line. This is exactly what I need between breaks and parts of a song. Good decision to have those arpeggiated parts in the rhythm section, coupled with an oscillation effect, glistening within the mid-range. The rapping is okay. I think that the issue that I had at the time of reviewing this initially was that Jay wasn't using his chest voice using the aforementioned rap parts, and it was sounding too fluffy as a result. That said, I kind of dig the melancholic mood to it all. It sounds like he's grieving a little bit. The piano is a bit too sonically far away. The chorus theme sounds fine to me, similar to what we had before with that awkward lead synth from the beginning etching its way into the mix. While I initially enjoyed the moog synth and vocal harmony at the end, I called them stunning. I am nowadays ambivalent because my main issue with this track is the inconsistency of the production between the headphones and speakers. If the studio side had been better handled, the song would have scored higher for sure. Conclusion. For a first album, this is incredibly strong. There is a lot of range to what Jay is trying to accomplish here. I think that if Jay can continue to work on his head voice and continue to find the best possible vocal tones for his ballads, as well as his more experimental pieces, he'll do well. I like that he took some risks, and I think that some of the tracks were incredible first impressions. It'll be cool to see what he does with album 2. The overall score for this album was 7.47. My favorite track was Black Humor. Album 2, Fantasy. Track number 1, Love for the Century. This track's a great way to start album 2, leading with a gorgeous filtered guitar and drum motif. It's a truly charming entrance. However, when the whole band comes in, there's a weird phasing on the cymbals, which I'm not particularly keen on. The vocals are sounding a bit more confident than they did in the first album, and the production quality in general is a little bit cleaner. There's a friendly, fascinating chord progression in the bridge, with warmth added by the generous vocal overdubs. The build in the chorus near the end is tight, with a clean transition into the hook, and a lot of range melodically within said chorus. Not a lot of diversity from this point though, however, it is an intro track, so fans of previous works need to feel somewhat familiar. The key change in the outro chorus is well received, and while Jay is still struggling with his head voice in certain sections, it's still a solid effort overall. Track 2, Dad, I've Come Back. There's some dramatic storm foley at the beginning, coming in alongside the 90s hip-hop drum samples and the string harmonies that are filled with dread. I do like the tone of the strings here, including the chorus-laden guitar melodies, and the drums sound punchy. However, the stereo panning is sounding a bit weird for my tastes, almost like the double-tracked vocals are too far apart. The bass line and sub-melodies with the beast mode rapping are positively elevated. The vocals in the chorus sound like he's crying out. The delivery is very believable. The brass and the instrumental filled between the chorus and verse is synthetic. And obviously so, you know. And due to this, it's not as abrupt, and the parts that they play here harmonize well with the other elements of the composition. The vocal flow overall is impressive. I'm appreciating the combination of the hook vocals and rapped verses here. There's a slick combination of the original sung hook line and speed rapping in the outro section that tops it off nicely. Finally, the choice of leaving the storm at the end, leaving things unresolved, was a wise choice. Track 3. Simple Love. Okay, so we have a cute little jingly track for 3. Nice. There's a polite guitar theme that pairs well with the sidechain kicks. His vocals sound clearer here, but there's still a little bit of hesitation in those lines, like within the previous album. The bridge section is quaint and cheery with interesting catchy chord progressions and adept panning of the vocals. The guitar parts remain rhythmically and texturally consistent, as coupled with some slick drum fills, and all of this is great. The sense of space within this track is charming, and through monitor speakers while scripting, the sub bass is well handled in the mix. The chorus sounds charming, bright, and charismatic, and I'm wondering why I initially gave this track a 7.25 score. The 16th note grooves on the hi-hats and legato lead phrasings are great contrasts. The use of kicks in unison with the vocal parts, climbing together during the build into the hook from the verses was cool. While I can't understand what Jay is saying here, he sounds more comfortable when he's singing gently. The only main negative I can imagine here is that we have a lack of diversity within the lead elements. Jay's the main focal point here constantly, and it's less interesting in my opinion because with less dynamic range in this recording, it almost sounds like we just assumed that a listener would just accept the existing elements without continuous compositional development. Track 4, Ninja. This one is by far one of the tracks I remember most fondly from Jay. There's a really intriguing flow at the start with the best rapping Jay has done yet. It's so engaging. The Game Boy-esque synths and the strings, the beats on the drums, and the weird oing oing vocals in the bridge are fucking amazing. It's so peppy and charismatic, and there's so much personality shown throughout. In addition to the spoken vocal parts between the bridges and hooks, I'm getting the impression that this appears to be one of Jay's passion projects. The theme is not sleeping on it, probably one of the most engaging hooks that I've heard from Jay as of this point in the video, and the high energy approach is appropriate for the situation because the song would have honestly fallen flat without it. I've just noticed the turntablism in some of the itchy Nissan-chi parts, alongside the fighting Foley and instrumental break, and it's just so wonderful. So much going on that simultaneously makes sense within the context of the piece. Additionally, it's so cool that Jay is rapping in a different language. That's not an easy thing to do, for sure. Also, the bass response is flawless. I have no complaints about this track whatsoever. I'm not sure why it wasn't a 9, to be honest. There are conversational tones that complement the nu metal vibes, and it's just a great time all around. Track 5, Couldn't Say. Oh, a helicopter with choir vocals and a string section. That's the intro for this song, which I'm aware makes more sense when watching the music video. It's very wishy sounding, but what I will say now is that it's definitely not worth watching the music video for this song through YouTube, especially at a lower quality, because that aircraft sounds horrible on low bit rates, with some painful resonant frequencies in the 2 to 4 kHz range. It's not so bad through Spotify and studio monitors, but hey. Truth be told, it's a weird start to proceedings, isn't it? Once the Foley flies away, we have the choir vocal pads alongside the typical guitars, bass, and drums. The singing, the style of it sounds too delicate for my tastes, regardless of how it suits the rest of the arrangement, and I already miss Ninja. I don't know why they chose the Casio keyboard choir tone for the sparkly backing harmonies, but it's fine. I still think that the spatial Foley is too loud. It clips Jay during the bridge build. The strings are too present, and the mid-range with a staccato, with a snare tone best described as popcorn popping, and the vocals in the background comps sound a bit flat. With all this said, the falsetto is convincing and it's sort of magical sounding. There's also a neat little harp part in the halfway point of the track that I'm sincerely appreciating in post. In the interlude section, the head voice is still sounding a bit rough, and the backing call and response vocals are barely there. However, I can tell that he's trying. There could have been some further, notch EQing in the bass, because that low end is just not sitting politely with the rest of the elements in the mix. It genuinely sounds underprocessed. As a final note, there did seem to be a sense of emptiness within the main motifs despite how full the arrangement was at times. Maybe that's an attempt at symbolizing the sense of distance. Track 6, Shanghai 1943. Okay, so there's a triplet groove. I think this is a first for Jay's work, at least from what I've heard. The vocals are sounding a little bit different for some reason, and I'm not sure why. Did they record these tracks in the same recording session as the rest of the album? Nice work with the hi-hats here, which are comfortably resonant alongside the rim shots of the kit. There's a subtle glow to the strings and the arpeggios throughout the guitars and the bridge. There's a subtle glow to the strings and the arpeggios throughout the guitar parts are beautiful. The legato on the vocals in the bridge, ending on a stop that accents the entry to the hook, is a great choice. There are some interesting offbeat accents with the guitar parts that again are different to what we've had previously, and they are therefore welcome. REJ's pipes, there's some solid crooning going on here with a relative smoothness throughout the chorus. It's sounding like Jay is calling out for something, but I don't know what. The overdubs are flush in the mid-range, very bright and supportive. I didn't like the tone of the trumpet samples. They were a little bit blunt for my tastes and didn't mesh well with the rest of the arrangement. I'm unsure if we deserved a key change in the final hook. Like, what did that accomplish? Was it just a way to justify a longer song? On a positive note, I like that Jay is trying to extend himself with the vocals. That said, I don't really feel the benefits of it, as if this pushing of the boundaries is still sounding a bit rough to me. At this point, he sounds like he's struggling with the weight of his ambition. The main thing with the slow dance vibe is friendly. While there's a bit of tension in the harmony, including the bridge builds, there is a lack of drama to the overall atmosphere of the piece, and the track is almost too muted for my tastes. Track number 7, Sorry. Okay, so there's a really interesting intricate guitar riff that glides on top of the synth pads and drums. The cicada-ish hi-hats have not aged well. They're a bit sharp sounding. The vocal hook is great and explorative, but not revolutionary. The side pan double-tracked vocals in the bridge with an offbeat glide are interesting to listen to. There is an occasional synth there that's entertaining with a neoclassical flourish to it. But if I'm honest, like, why are there so many things going on within this arrangement? Why did we have a massive pause around the 130 mark that stunted the movement of the piece? Was it necessary? The percussion with the cymbals appears over-eager, and in essence, the studio production is at its weakest within this track, at least from an EQing and panning perspective. Individually, the synths and rough rhythm textures are great, but I don't understand from listening to the parts before why they're there or the context for them. One thing is for sure though, it's definitely experimental. This track is just really busy throughout. Yeah, this track is just really busy sounding overall, with lots of elements vying for the listener's attention. And as a result of this, I don't like how much is going on in the hook because I'm getting distracted by the vocal lines. They're spread on the far sides of the stereo field, giving them less body in the mix, and there's far less apparent context for some of these production decisions. They're spread on the far sides of the stereo field, giving them less body in the mix, and there's far less apparent context for some of these production decisions than I would have preferred. The boings and video gaming dun-dun-duns unfortunately seem kind of scratchy. While a lot of these ideas would become more popular years later, you know, Jay did kind of trendset here with some of these electronic concepts. It just seemed like two different songs in one, with a noticeable lack of cohesion and synergy throughout. Track 8, William Castle. This, full disclosure, is another of my favorite tracks from Jay outside of these rankings. It has a happy place in my heart. I love the vibe of it, but I digress. There are some cool gothic keys here with the church organs in the intro. The drums and bass suit the oral aesthetic, and the legato fills are a wise choice. The vocals are spooky sounding in parts with creative melodies and harmonies, and with the consideration of a backing motif. It's all very stylistically appropriate. The addition of the portamento lead and the bridge leads to the conclusion that there's a sensational combination of elements here. It's great to hear Jay trying different styles, and it's great to hear him not taking himself too seriously. The studio production overall is exquisite. Every instrument is well notched within the stereo field and the frequency spectrum, with no exceptions. The choirish backing vocals are welcome and well thought out, and the speed, the flow of the rap parts in the outro, it's exceptional. Jay's rapping is coming into its own. The various elements of the drum kit, including the kick drums, have a great punchiness to them. The church organ is so pretty sounding despite the devilishness of the harmonies it's playing, and the bells are the icing on the cake. There's even some foley included of howling, ghost sounds, ideas used by some horror films like the theremin tones, and other elements that make it very atmospheric and invoke strong imagery, furthering the ambience on the piece. And the image recorded from the keys at the end is sensational. This honestly should have scored higher. Track number 9, Nunchucks. Damn, can't go wrong with a gritty distorted guitar riff. The drums of the new metalist chops are kind of quiet, but I nonetheless appreciate them, and the production within this track as a whole is more than acceptable. The rap flow is convincing and charismatic with twos and fros between various takes. There's lots of energy in the vocal performance with double-tracked overdubs, and the hook lending plenty of forward motion. Lots of intensity and energy in the hoo-hoo-ha-he parts, and it's an absolute pleasure to listen to. The glitchy guitar parts and the transitions between bridge and chorus seem more ornamental sounding, but that's fine. The inclusion of the Suona in the second chorus is fantastic and unexpected and appears well as an upper octave partner to the crispy power chords. The lack of coloration in Jay's rapped sections lets the Suona sing for him. Truth be told, I was not expecting a piano recital in the middle of a track, but that's fine. It was a great interlude and a change of pace that even as a metalhead I can appreciate. The fake out at the end of the track near the 3-minute mark is a fun concept, and the gong ending it all marks the conclusion of a song that I didn't want to end. Track 10, Silence. It's the finale of this album, and there's a beautiful piano line to begin with. It's very elegant. There's a great tone to the vocals, crisp and clear, and it couples well with the piano in a similar range on the sides, as well as the cascading strings, which are a welcome addition to the mix. The choice of a ballad format in regards to the song structure is fitting, considering that we haven't really had too many of them within the set list. Jay sounds way more in his element here. Ballads are basically his bread and butter, and it's really cool to hear him fully at ease with himself, the story he's telling, and the accompaniment throughout. The chorus vocals and the piano are phenomenal as well. The drums with a simple buzz roll make a classy entrance, and the bass fills in everything else in a loving manner. The overall harmony isn't particularly complex, and it benefits from that. I really appreciate the stutter, the slowdown, the pregnant pause of all the instruments before each hook. It sounds like the whole band is waiting on Jay, and it's a great aesthetic. It makes it seem more like a live performance. The use of higher notes on the leads with less apparent strain indicate that Jay is making more progress with his head voice, and the ascension with the outro chorus key change showcases his growth as a performer. The mixing is respectable throughout this track, and I like the glow and the warmth within the tone of it all. While there is nothing truly remarkable or game-changing from Jay here in comparison to what I've heard from Jay recently or in general, I can appreciate that this is a solid way to finish a record. Conclusion. The second album of Jay's had more of a variety show theme with an arguably more diverse range of genres that were explored. It also illustrated that we were becoming more confident within our head voice, as well as what was required in regards to nailing commercial-grade studio production. There were some parts of this album that I didn't really appreciate, like the spaceship Foley sounds that were too loud and shrill for my tastes. And some songs like Sorry just had too much going on for me to feel comfortable with it. It was just too compositionally complex without the benefits of the extra effort. That said, songs like Nunchucks, William Castle, and Ninja were incredible. I'm looking forward to hearing more of what Jay can do in future, but also I want to hear more consistency overall with the general audio quality of these tracks, especially where attempts at additional Foley are concerned. The overall score for this album is 7.48. My favorite track was Nunchucks. Album 3, The 8 Dimensions. Track 1, Half Beast Human. Third album time! Okay, so in the beginning we have woodwinds, an orchestral section, and it basically sounds like a movie trailer. Very cinematic with the drums, the gravitas of the instrumental harmonies, and the scope of it seems immense. Until we have the turntablism and the hip-hop beats, which admittedly sound a little fresher than in previous albums. The production sounds a bit more polished than in previous releases in regards to the leveling, the EQing, the compression, and most else. Great work with the vocal overdubs. It's a little more articulate than what we've had previously, with more clarity and the high end of the head voice. The synth strings are very atmospheric despite a clear tonal departure from what we had in the intro section. That's it, and hold the phone. Why did the growlies sound so loud? Is it meant to be scary sounding or deliberately abrupt? Past that hiccup, the continued layering and coloration of the brass in the second half is slick, alongside the continuous turntablism, the staccato harmonies, and the bits of marching Foley that obviously need the music video for context. Past that hiccup, the continued layering and coloration of the brass in the second half is slick, alongside the continuous turntablism, the staccato harmonies, and the bits of marching Foley that obviously need the music video for context. The 808 is tight in the low end, and I'm generally satisfied. Not bad, Jay. Not bad at all. Track 2, Iron Box of an Island. So we have a beautiful intro with the piano playing a classical standard, with the conversation being held in Mandarin or Cantonese, I can't tell. It's an interesting choice, to use someone else's piece as part of an opening section. Without the music video or an understanding of the language, I don't get the context of the intro with the main theme. I think it's too video dependent. However, the studio production is stellar. Jay still seems to be using a little bit too much head voice. It's still sounding a bit forced, somewhat uncomfortable. In terms of positives, I like the monorhythmic guitar riffs and the glowing backing vocals. The singing in the chorus is gentle and kind sounding and complements the accompaniment incredibly well. There's a charming harmonic shift in the second half of the chorus, which is effective and makes for an engaging listen. To reiterate, the mixing and mastering this album, so far with one notable exception, is great. There is a consistency with the dynamics of the mix, and it's sounding thoroughly commercial grade at this point. It'll be interesting to see if this remains consistent throughout the rest of the songs in their record. Outside of general praise for the studio production, I didn't really find the musical motif particularly exciting. I can enjoy the personality, but having a similar vibe throughout, without any massive shifts in the way that the instrumental harmonies are approached, leads to an average listening experience. I don't really like the key change in the later stages of the track, but hey, I can see why people enjoy it. It's one of those signature Jay Chou style tunes that his fans vibe with. Track 3, Secret Signal. Secret Signal is a song that opens with an engaging synth line, and this melodic motif connects well with the eventual guitars and string sections. The bassy 808 fills the absence of low end in the mix well, despite an honestly unacceptable level of definition within its tone. Jay's vocals are pad-like, very approachable, and there is a lovely overall sense of innocence within his performance. While I can't really hear the phasing in the scripting stage, I should note that I heard some phasing in the initial listening section for this ranking video via headphones. I kind of wish there was more consistency with the rhythm and the percussion. There's a nice little wow sound that has been featured in previous albums that accents the transfer to the choruses. The bass is in unison with the kicks, and while I appreciate the sense of unity, I'm feeling a sense of desperation for something within the arrangement to really surprise or amaze me, especially towards the later stages of the track. My continued and potentially caustic comments re his upper vocal range remain valid here. His head voice is just too much. He's clearly straining in the interlude, and it's unnecessary. He should have either rekeyed the composition or just kicked into falsetto a whole lot sooner. The fade out was nice though. Track 4, Dragon Fist. This track here, number 4, feels a lot like the first song in this album, except it commits to the bit that they initially instantiated and continues the similar tones throughout in a way that's actually intriguing. We have lots of interesting traditional instruments with big drums and turntables and all sorts of tonal and textural goodness. The distorted guitar tones sound superior, fuller, and less brittle than they did in album 2. The rap flow within the verses is confident and strong. This is one of those performances where I feel as though Jay was in his element. The call and responses between the main vocals and sidepan chants are giving me life. Even the unconventional changes in voicing for the string pluck sound relatively sensible because of the superior quality of audio production and because there's been more care put into the components and making them sound less random. The double-tracked guitars are the icing on the cake. The break for the rubato strummed parts, heck, the sudden pause in the composition as a whole with the crazy thingy parts in the center, it's just wild, chaotic, and surprisingly, it works. I can't believe that this is a Pepsi song. What the fuck? I consider this to be an excellent tune, superior in certain respects to some of his bigger hits. What is this? I love the range and the passion and care put into it. I don't even mind the fact that there's a key change in the final chorus. This song earns it. The fantastic hand drums and with the filtered percussion rhythm motif at the end. More of this, please. Track number 5. Where is the train going? The slow build of the train sounds in the intro makes sense to me. This is in part because there is a train in the audio, and there's a train mentioned in the song title. It's great to have that connection between these elements, as I haven't had that luxury as of late. The drums, R&B bass tones in the 90s West Coast synths make for a somber occasion, a bittersweet ambience. That said, there are many little instrumental intricacies going on that are pleasantly subtle, and you have to go searching through the mix for them. I'm not as sold with the vocal performance, though this is simply because it's on par, for a lot of what Jay has done so far within his discography, and nothing vocally revolutionary has occurred within this piece. Spacey synth coloration in the chorus is something that I'm unsure of, because I don't know why trains are in space. It's ambitious, and I can tell that effort has been expended, but it does seem to be a little too much for the piece, at least in this respect. The whooshy synths with the guitars are a fascinating choice. This is probably one of the most busy tracks that I've heard from Jay, and given some of the rock metal tracks that we've had so far, that's saying something. The guitar and key harmonies are nonetheless luxurious in their own regard, and I think that the bass and drums cooperate well. There's a cool switcher change in rap flow in the latter half of the track. There was some repeaters in the chorus. There's a lack of sameness for the most part, which is honestly excellent. Due to the variety of different tones and textures, I don't really mind too much that we're copying and pasting the outro chorus, though it would have been nice to have had the layers instantiated in that interlude follow through to the outro chorus. Track number 6, Split. So we have another ballad. It's fine, honestly. There's a really stunning harmony with the strings, the piano, and the bass, which capture the senses and sound really intriguing. The vocals enter afterward in a way which is fragile but assertive. Jay's performance sounds incredibly authentic, and I like that he's not straining himself against the accompaniment. There is an incredibly convincing chorus line with the welcome addition of the soft-sounding drum parts on the acoustic kit. So far there are no inappropriate instrumental layers, which makes for a palatable, accessible listening experience. In regards to ornamentation, Jay is finally exploring some legato and vibrato techniques which are starting to sound incredibly tuneful. The backing vocals that come in through the bridge section ascend that build further, and he nailed it. While I initially praised the bass resonance in the listening live streams, I'm hearing it now and I'm undecided. The rest of the arrangement is compositionally safe. Sure, it's compelling within its own right, but it's void of anything truly remarkable. That said, there is a marvelous level of dynamic range to this performance, and despite the 4-minute 12 length, there is absolutely no filler. Good tune. Track 7, Grandpa's Tea. The drums at the start are an enigma to me, at least in the scripting stage. Why didn't I comment on them earlier? I thoroughly appreciate the drum groove at the beginning of this piece that's riffed on and continued throughout. The double track chanted vocals and the chorus parts are adorable. There are some clever decisions made with the phrasing and sequencing of the singing and rap parts within the verse, and the jangly guitar riffs containing pristine major triads and suspended intervals add to a main theme that is ultimately catchy as hell. The drum fills, the flexibility with the grooves are wonderful in how they just don't repeat. This is one of the stronger tracks from the album for sure. The turntablism is just great as a transitional device, and I feel instantly refreshed after listening through Split. The la 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 at the end is so innocent and upbeat, and it seems like Jay really wanted to go back to his childhood and revisit his youthful, playful innocence. It's a positive experience overall. I heard it and felt happier afterwards. At this stage, this could be a contender for the top track from the album. Track 8, Back to the Past. Truth be told, I spoke too soon. This song is an absolute banger of a tune. The guitars and vocals are similar to previous tracks, but somehow seem more mature, whether due to the elevated audio production or due to the simplicity of the motif itself that's expertly spun to suit Jay's approach as a singer and storyteller. It's quite a contrast to Grandpa's Tea for sure, and if I wasn't as familiar with Jay's work as I am by now, I'd consider it a detriment, but if you know, you know. There's excellent harmonic shifts and within instrumental layers and chord progressions, with ample ornamentations within the DI'd guitar leads especially, and the hook section is just stunning. The vocal concept throughout the chorus is wonderful, twisting and turning and playing with the listener's emotions, and I was blown away by how in unison everything is from a compositional perspective. The drums are relatively minimalist, in line with the bass notes, but that's fine in this specific situation. We had enough, There's more ornamentation in Jay's cleans, and the harmonies that appeared alongside the country licks on the 6-string signal towards the tune. It tells of gratitude, a misty tinge of regret, and I think I'm in love. This is definitely one of my favorite Jay Chou tracks. There's no sleeping on this one. There's no obvious weaknesses outside of the limitations of the genre and the fact that Jay's voice is still developing. The filtering of the original theme at the end is a classy way to side things off. Absolute tune. Track number 9, Little Ironsmith in Milan. At the time of scripting this video, I'd forgotten about the darkly beautiful intro motif with the brass section. It's wonderful, and I low-key wish that Jay had kept at that because I don't think that the rest of the tune lends credence to why it started that way. Past that, there's a really cool little string movement at the beginning of the secondary intro with the bass and drums. The guitar line is perky and modulates well through the verse and bridge sections. The vocals are pleasant and there's a generally chill flow to them. There is added turntablism and saxophones in there akin to some of the acid jazz within the first album. There is also a great sense of rhythmic phrasing throughout the bridge. And if we just pause for a moment, why do we have the boingy boings? Why are there moves? I guess this is one of those songs where you need the video for context. I kinda dig the strangeness though. We're at a point now where the Foley sounds like it's part of the song, which is genuinely respectable. The panning of the vocals on the side of the mid-verse too is intriguing. There is a well-played solo performance from the classical guitars, which is just a fun little addition within itself, makes sense within the context of flamenco playing within Milan. I get it, I understand the reference, even though I can tell it's more vetted towards the benefit of those watching the music video. It's a good-natured piece, and I'm glad that it exists, even though I have no idea what was going on for like the entirety of the time. Track number 10, The Final Battle. I will say this for Jay, when he goes hard, he goes hard. Having a full-on Warzone section with the machine gun fire, the explosions, alongside the heaviness of the string motif and everything going on is a ballsy decision, especially with the rest of the album that we've had so far, but it works, you know. The strings and bells make sense for the Foley. There's also a great sense of dynamic range with the vocals entering smoothly and establishing their presence successfully. Truth be told, I wasn't and am still not super keen on the hi-hat sounds, but the panning of the cymbal shimmers and the bridges is great. There is a fantastic energy to the bass line. It's radiant, actually, and the sub drop into the chorus that predates the transcendent string harmonies, it's iconic. There is some remarkably fitting vocal ornamentation to slot alongside the gun sounds. And while I wasn't initially stoked with the loudness of the Foley here, I figured that these sounds are loud because it's in a battlefield. It was a great choice to have everything go silent when they did the clip change before the second verse. Aside from a little bit of fraying, with one of the vocal lines peaking in the recording itself, the bass strings, the guitars, you know, the drums, vocal melodies, and overdubs are an absolute treat. I just wish that the bagpipes had been real ones because they sounded a little bit alien, at least tonally, to the rest of the acoustic and non-electronic instruments within the mix. It was a bold move to have a song about war as the final track on this album, but I nonetheless enjoyed my time with it. Conclusion. The third album from Jay displayed his potential in a way that excited me. While I wasn't necessarily a fan of every track, including the sound design choices and level of some of the Foley, such as the orc sounds, I nonetheless appreciate that at this point, Jay is continuing to become more comfortable in his own shoes, and the production in general seems to have improved. I don't really see an overall increase in quality between this and the second album, as there are some tracks here that resonate with me less than the first or second records. But that's just probably because, as per Jay's famous style, he tries lots of different things within each effort or each release, and while still remaining close to the ballads that made him famous, you know. Aside from some sound issues, a fake bagpipe, and some head voice issues, he's doing well so far, and I have no other complaints. Overall score of the album was 7.6. My favorite track was Back to the Past. Album 4, Hui Mei. Track number 1, In Father's Name. So it's a very intense introduction to this fourth album, quite different to what we've had previously. There's a nice use of the oboe or clarinet and pluck strings in the beginning that feature alongside the rest of the instrumentation and religious themes. The fluttering harmonies with the organ and Ave Maria prayer are very cinematic and indicate a sense of danger. It sounds like the beginning of a mafia film, if I'm honest. So I'm not a massive fan of the high-pitched "ya" that occurs once we get to the actual tune. While I didn't initially understand the concept of that part, scripting stage Spiderhands is venturing that it's meant to sound like an opera singer. The guitar tempers it out and pairs well with the filtered percussion. The Muga synth is a nice return to his hip-hop R&B roots. With all this said and done, even with the non-filtered kits and the hook, the mix sounds a little bit flat, like we're filtering it, and I hope that we are not taking backward steps in terms of our studio production. The hi-hats that enter later give it a bit of life. The vocals are very softly spoken without a hint of aggression, and that is reminiscent of the first album. The musical theme is consistent, with a nice contrast between the pace of the rap flow and its constant synth lead in the center field. The entrance into the third chorus is a bit flat and disappointing. Sure, there's vocal range, but there's little else to latch on to, at least when contrasted with the opening of this piece. The operatic interlude is beautiful, and the gunshots pierce the stereo field, with the music video being necessary viewing, of course. At least there's a shift tonally in the 4:45 mark, which I wholeheartedly admit to having previously understated, because the fact that Jay is duetting with a soprano is unbelievably cool. This should have been scored higher than it was, but hey. Track 2, Coward. So there's an instantly interesting musical theme to kick things off, with the unnerving neutrality of the starting point. The distorted guitars within this track sound a little bit too thin for my tastes. Their tone, in my opinion, is weaker than their appearances within album 3. The rap flow in this, however, is phenomenal, and it's sounding, leagues ahead of what's gone on in previous releases. There's a lack of bass within this track, which at first glance is kind of disappointing, but then having an 808 here would have probably hindered it, especially with the lack of definition within previous synth basses in Jay's other albums. The choruses in general are straight fire, no complaints. The vocals, guitars, the strummed muted harmonics, alongside the new metal grooves are all stellar, and the fills that lead into them are great. There's a bit of space within the arrangement there, especially with the lack of sub bass, though I can hear more of the lower frequencies before the child rapped vocals. In fact, the aforementioned organ and electric bass going into the child rapping is fucking amazing, and I love that we've done something so different from previous tracks. Who would have thought that Jay would hand the mic over to another singer, especially a kid? I actually adore that Jay and the kid collabed with each other in the final verse, as if the individual messages are coming together to hang out and celebrate each other. It's so interesting, and the turntablism in the third chorus is eloquent and a great additional layer to a track that did exactly what it needed to. There was a lot of repetition of that hook at the end, but it was catchy as heck, so I didn't mind. Track 3, Sunny Day. This tune, Sunny Day, had pretty acoustic guitars to begin with, arpeggiating with friendly and offensive melodic concepts. The harmonica that comes in afterwards with Jay's first verses is gentle, and there's a crispiness to the additional guitar layers that almost smothers the quieter backing vocals, potentially in a way that's detrimental. Now that I think about it, the vocals kind of sit in the background, and through the verses the bridge sounded to me to be relatively lackluster. Initially I wasn't sure why this song was so beloved. The overdrive on the guitars, or the lack of oomph from the drum kit, leave the song in a state of perpetual motion with minimal adjustments to perceived dynamic range. That said, I do like the change in the chorus between the A-B chord progressions and the dip that Jay takes with his melodies towards the minor harmonies in the whole second half of each chorus loop is wonderful. I think that it's the hook line, the melodies within the chorus that make the song special to people. The soft rapping in the outro is acceptable, but I'm not a massive fan of how bluntly it ends. Track 4, Class 3-2. Do you know what time it is? Well, guess what? It's ping pong time. And I'm so happy about this. There's a clock ticking away within the mix, at least sonically, and it sounds off alongside lush synthy pad bits and a constant percussive flow. However, we also have the ping pong players filling in for the drums as rhythmic accents. Sure, Jay's rap verses and song hooks are fantastic and are on par with the rest of it throughout his discography thus far, but the chord progressions and the lack of any harsh textures lead to an overall muted vibe that almost dulls the creativity of the ping pong conclusions themselves. It's nice to have the unison of the ping pong grooves with the spoken syllables. If I'm honest, it's unique. I haven't heard a track like this before, despite how I kind of said it was relatively homogenized before. There's a palatable bridge section with the dramatic sounding string harmonies, and the song also features occasional synth flutters that are there to split up the chorus sections. The harp accenting the higher ranges melodically is a clever inclusion that brightens up the composition. The break at the halfway point of the set was another great choice, though a more complete understanding of the context would probably come from watching the music video. I am wondering if they couldn't have just had another lead instrument in there to replace Jay Chou, just to make things a little bit more varied from a vocal perspective. I suppose that the ping pong parts are the closest thing we'll get to that. There's further definition and oomph to the chanted sideman vocal parts in the outro chorus, and it ends as mysteriously as it entered. Track 5, East Wind Breaks. For a 5-minute 15 track, it sure does start off with a bang. Instantly, a really gorgeous, intricate piano melody appears. The overall motif is stellar and suits the scene well. The jazzy neutrality and chord extensions within the second half of the verse are great. There's a sense of sophistication throughout the piece, whether through the intricately delicate compositional development from beginning to hook, or the sensational Erhu solo after the first chorus, which is both incredibly elegant in its delivery and a great substitute for Jay's leads. I like the sense of unison between the chorus vocals and the drum kit. That said, they're trying to do the same A-B thing like they did for Sunny Day, and I don't think it had the same effect twice. I'm unsure of what kind of drum kit we have here. Is it acoustic or sampled? Because like in the initial review stage, I was suspicious of the crash cymbal tone. If the drum kit was electric or sampled, why didn't they just use an acoustic drum kit here? Was it simply for the sake of, being able to combine these elements, or was it a limitation on Jay's end? Nonetheless, it's cool to have these traditional instruments involved. Given the influences that Jay has displayed throughout this album so far, the trilled string parts with the descending arpeggios and more traditional ingredients make for an enjoyable listening experience. I'm unsure, like a few tracks that I'm revisiting during the scripting phase, I'm unsure as to why this one didn't get a higher score. Track 6. You can hear it. Hey, you know what? I adore this piano intro because it sounds really friendly and approachable, and it hasn't overstayed its welcome. All of this is in Jay's ballpark, coupled with the soft ballad vocals and around bass tones. It's fine, you know? He's confident within this range. The kick tone is nice, but I also think it's sampled, though I guess I'm getting softer with age because I don't mind it during the scripting stage. The vocal falsetto within the bridge section is much more confident. He's at a place now where I can trust that, he knows how to project himself correctly as a singer and do head voice safely, which is awesome, you know? That said, the calypso drums are... Wait, why are there calypso drums in this song? I'm still confused by that one. Though, to be fair, they are a nice addition to the higher ranges that Jay is thankfully not trying to associate himself with as much at this point in time. I don't necessarily agree with the sameness of the layering performance of the bridge and verses. And the vocals do sound flat in certain instances due to the limiter, being hit by a lack of dynamic range. There is an inhibitive amount of compression on them, and this is in part what led to the cardinal sin of, bell tree being too loud in the mix. And it wasn't balanced on both sides of the stereo field. Why? Outside of that, I do like the sound of the rain foley alongside the 7th chords and the keys in the outro with Jay Chrising to lead us out. It was a really bittersweet, yet ultimately satiating way to end things. Track number 7. Same tone. Same tone sounds kind of crazy and quirky, almost immediately. There's some intricate work with the stringed instruments and the sitar in the opening, and it's inviting in part due to how different it's been to what we've had previously. It's kind of dope, truth be told. The overall aesthetic reminds me of a Blacksmith and Milan song, or the Ironsmith and Milan song. There's a great tone to the drums too. The vocals sound a little flat here, though this breathy rap is apparently his specialty. I think that comes down to a lack of dynamic range within his vocals, similar to what we had in tracks like You Can Hear It. I'm unsure why there is such extreme panning of some of these instruments, and apparently the leveling is a bit weird. Though admittedly in the scripting stage it all sounds fine. I think a lot of why the song scored higher is how there's so many different styles to instrumental inclusions, fusions of various trends and textures, and despite the compositional complexity, none of it seems discordant or disconnected. The trills and the sitars and other similar sections sound great, alongside the hip-hop industrial drums that keep the groove moving along. There's more of the rapping coupled with the clean hook vocals in the outro chorus, which is a staple of Jay's style at this point. I initially wrote a whole lot more about the variety of things that were happening within this piece, but they were gibberish, so I've decided to replace them with the following. This is one of the tracks from Jay Chou that show why he is such a phenomenal musician. It's really difficult to put all these influences together, but he smashed it and made them his own. Track 8, Her Eyelashes. Fun fact about the song, I've always had a sweet spot for it. For one, it's one of the strongest vocal performances from Jay, full stop. He really suits the blues rock genre. The strings with the bass and the guitar and the bluesy scale transitions in the verse are all stunning. And I really can't say how I feel about how great the combination of these elements is without using language that would get this video demonetized. The transition from the verse into the chorus is a bit rough, but I think that's because he wanted the hook to be more uplifting and for the verses to sink back down. which is why the movement into verse 2 is so fucking cool. The distorted guitar riffs, picked in unison with the hi-hat flow, is wonderful, and I think there's even some trumpets or brass going on underneath the hook riffs that I'm only noticing now in post. I don't even mind that the percent brass sounds a little bit crass, because the grittiness of the, the rhythm textures and the sassiness of the verse melodies give it some leeway that allows for some rough edges. It isn't trying to be a perfect, pristine radio single. In all honesty, this is a very mature performance from Jay. I wish he had done more songs like this. There's ample drum fills to a tonal and rhythmic diversity that, when coupled with the outro chorus and layered clean vocal takes, make for a truly special experience. While I wasn't as excited in the second listen as I was in the first, I nonetheless consider this piece to be one of my favorites. Track 9, Cliff of Love. I mean, holy crap, that piano playing in the first few seconds is absolutely stellar. Sometimes I forget how talented Jay is, even when I'm in the middle of reviewing and ranking his entire discography. In other news, it is so nice to hear Jay committing fully to the vulnerability shown early on within his previous works. His performances are becoming so believable. Fun fact, do you know what's making some of his ballads super awesome to listen to? Well, it's that occasional falsetto that he now has full control over. It's so simple yet intensely effective. That chorus melody, coupled with the strings that soar alongside Jay, it's iconic, and the way it comes in with the gritty guitars, bass, and drums is succulent. While I was initially dissatisfied with the lack of definition in the guitar parts, the drum work is actually phenomenal, and I appreciate that the essence of it isn't super aggressive and in your face. Guitar on the left side, extending the notes on the triads and the harmonies, is gorgeous. While nothing revolutionary occurred within this track, aside from Jay absolutely blasting the keys in the intro, it was lovely to listen to. Short and sadly, but it was well worth the listening. Track 10, Terrace Field. Sure, it's another song where we have the piano as the sole intro focus, but they decided to chop up the theme halfway through and continue with the traditional bass drums and soft-spoken rapping. It should be noted that I love the vocals in the chorus, though I think it's in a different language. In fact, my understanding is that it's actually an indigenous language, which is really cool. It's great that Jay feels more comfortable with sharing vocal duties with other people, especially if it is for the betterment of the music that he's making. There's some really compelling vocal melodies and harmonies sprinkled throughout this piece, and the strings and everything else behind it sound fresh and engaging. There's almost a funeral tone where the brass is concerned, almost like we're mourning something important but before it occurs. The percussion is simple to follow along with, and I think that this track is atypically easy listening unless you're able to natively understand the story being told. There's a huge emotional weight to the strings that I can't really fathom without full context. There might be animosity or frustration, but Jay's vocals are really airy and fluffy, and I can't tell either way. Still, great track. Track 11. Double Blades. So I was pleasantly surprised to find that we have more of the tribal vocals here to seek between the tracks of 10 and 11. I was also unsure if I was drunk while initially scripting this part of the ranking video, because half of these drafts that I've typed here are absolute nonsense. I did nonetheless appreciate the distorted guitar parts of the drum grooves, as well as the thrashy aesthetic that surrounded it. It's a great mood shift from the trepidation in the intro. And that switch to the quiet part for the vocal entry during the verse was smart, because it showcases a solid level of dynamic range and contrast as well. The violoncello and the bridge alongside the pad vocals are welcome additions to the existing arrangement, and the mixing and leveling overall is hella tight. The head voice falsetto section sit well on top of everything in the hook that was showcased previously, and the turntablism with actual chopped samples was lit. The head voice falsetto section sit well on top of everything else. The head voice falsetto section sit well on top of everything in the hook that was showcased previously, and the turntablism with actual chopped samples was lit. Apparently I was super duper excited about this track in the initial review, because I considered this to be the strongest track of the album. In the scripting stage, I find ways to partially justify this through hearing these beautiful, elegant orchestral string parts and woodwinds within the mid-track interlude. I'm aware that the placement of this is again related to the music video, however there's a level of nuance here that nonetheless has to be respected. It doesn't sound random. They have managed to make it make sense outside of the video, and that's great, There was some country twangy inclusions before the final outro chorus, but that's just par for the course at this point. Ultimately, it's just new metal to a T, with Jay Chou on the mic, being thoroughly extra, you know, with the rapping at the end. I don't know if I should have scored it this highly, but it's still fucking incredible nonetheless. Conclusion. In my opinion, this is my favorite album from Jay Chou thus far. Songs like Her Eyelashes and Double Blades make me incredibly happy. They are songs that I remember both vividly and fondly. It's a further example of Jay's potential now that he has a few albums under his belt and has all the tools and experience required to make the best music that he's capable of. I wasn't always happy with everything that I heard. In my opinion, there were some aspects of the album, such as the vocal production, alongside some of the other choices related, that didn't sound as good as the third record. I was also dissatisfied with occasional deficits of dynamic range. That said, it's still a strong release, and Jay should be proud of himself. This album has an overall score of 7.81, and my favorite track was Double Blades. Album number 5, Common Jasmine Orange. Track 1, My Territory. What is this, a Disney film? The 5th album is a DreamWorks animated fantasy skit? But then suddenly we have the sounds of helicopters? So far, at least within the intro of the record, it's all kinda quirky sounding, you know. If I'm honest, I'm not particularly sure if I like it or not. There's a very unusual, almost polarizing tone to Jay's vocals here. Why does he sound different? Is it a deliberate attempt at a different accent? Well, apparently people watching my initial live stream told me that it's a Beijing accent. So that's kind of neat. Thank you to those of you who helped me figure that one out. The rapping flow is clinical, it's really active and energetic, and the production is a little bit tighter with this one. I'm appreciative of the fact that we are consistently nailing the studio tones within these tracks at this point in Jay's career. There's further clarity with Jay's vocals with less breathiness, and the traditional instruments are a nice touch. The drum grooves and fills are sharp and punchy, but not to a point where they steal attention, and there's also a nice call and response going on between different instruments within the arrangement. The piano in the later half is a nice shift tonally, almost magical sounding in a way that makes sense with the mystical orchestral intro, and the work with the synths and buzzy leads within the different drum kit near the end is also kind of fresh. I should also note that the woodwind leads alongside the hook vocals were dazzling and interesting to listen to, even if I still don't understand the context of the use. This is the sound of progress. Alright, and the piano solo in the later section is absolutely divine. Didn't want to miss that bit. If I haven't mentioned it already, good stuff. Track 2, Common Jasmine Orange. The thing that I love about this track is the work that was done with the little music box chimes, the cloud drums, and the woodwinds in the intro section. The combination of these ideas is elegant and very easy to listen to. There was also a really pretty tone to Jay's vocals that matched well with the steel string harmonies and the 8th note drum patterns. I prefer the mixing of Jay's leads here a lot more than in previous releases, because the way they're filled and EQ'd melds so well with the tone of the guitars and the other aspects of the composition. The bridge strings and the vulnerability in Jay's voice are an apt pairing. The guitar arpeggios featured later in the chorus are really pretty and shine brightly among the drums and the bass. Incidentally, the drums are a little bit quiet overall, but I think that's due to them being a part of a really full sounding mix. There's a phenomenal use of dynamic range in the midpoint, with the airiness of the wind foley, the ambience of the aforementioned chimes in the ether. There's gentle bows and syncopations going on within the arrangement, and there's depth that's added to the mix by virtue of that, which is absolutely divine. I have nothing but love for how this song was produced. It's a really solid studio effort, and they should be really proud of themselves. Jay's vocal ornamentation is in full swing in the later choruses, and this is further evidence of his continued development as a singer. The classical elements on the outro chorus pair well with the symphonic opening track of this record, and the extra layers of lead development as things come to a close are stunning. Finally, the use of strings and woodwinds with the pan drums complementing the tail end of their efforts leads to a more than satisfying conclusion. Wonderful. Track 3, Excuse. Truth be told, there's an excellent use of the keys within his intro part, even if I don't particularly enjoy how the sound is being, reproduced. In my opinion, Jay's voice and the guitar is a little bit too resonant. Why is the mixing substandard in comparison to track 2? It's honestly frustrating. Outside of that irritation, there are some nice chord choices here within the bridge, and the Hammond organ is a warm, welcome layer, though it seems a bit pointed texturally as if it hadn't been not filtered effectively. If I'm honest, the biggest complaint that I have so far is that this song sounds like it should have been in a different album to the previous 2 tracks. They don't sound like they're on the same set list, if that makes sense. Sure, it's tonally interesting, the bass fills it in later, and we don't sit on a chord progression for too long, which I respect and appreciate. The transition into the bridge from the chorus is smart, the continuous 8th note accents couple well with the gradual, indefinite pace of the keys, organs, guitars, bass, and drums, and Jay's vocals are performatively consistent throughout. Compositionally, despite the motif remaining compelling enough to keep as a copy and paste job, and with this being one of his big ballads, I still feel cheated out of what could have literally sounded better if they'd just been more careful with the studio treatment of the individual components within the mix. Jay's vocal melodies were great though, no complaints about him personally at this point in time. What a shame. Track number 4, Grandma. Grandma? Grandma just slaps, dude. What's up with Jay and his misty tunes in this album? It's been 3 out of 4 at this stage, you know. The track comes in all at once with the kit, the harp, and the woodwinds, and it absolutely ain't screwing around. There's no sleeping on the stuff, no filler material. You know, sure we have more of the soft melodic rapping, but it's fine because production quality is back on track and there is more clarity to said soft vocals. I'm incredibly glad to have the children back to rap alongside Jay Chou, you know. There is a great sense of chemistry between the kids and Jay. Really good choice here to revisit previous creative decisions and to stick with what works, you know. Without the child rapping, the song feels a bit naked. Although with the storm foley and interludes with the snares on those buzz rolls, there's just enough to carry us through without becoming too familiar with what's been sitting there for some time. Sure, we're doubling chorus lines, but they're short enough that they're like eating popcorn. The hook sections, coupled with the woodwind sub-leads, make for palatable yet incredibly sad-sounding listening time. Despite the mild depression, it was a pleasant experience. While I do rate this song highly, I do sometimes forget that it exists. I think that the kid did just as good a job as Jay did, higher them. Track number 5, General. You know, for a 3-minute 20 track, there's a lot of content contained here with a level of compositional thematic depth that matches the vast majority of Jay's long form work. The turntablism in the intro section was hella tight. It's at the apex of its game at this point, and they really cut loose with it in the song. The rapped vocals in the verse are very assertive, almost verging on aggressive, especially considering Jay's previous efforts. It's one of the few times that I've heard Jay show aggression within a song while rapping. The fuck around and find out vibe is strong here. It's like R&B but with added hot sauce. It reminds me a little bit of Destiny's Child, except I actually want to listen to this song. The cutting and chopping of the vocals by the DJ in the break was a welcome addition, a great lead substitute. There's a rather unusual sung backing vocal through a radio filter with sidetrack chants highlighting certain aspects of the hook line that cater the song out and leave me hanging on for more. It's a shame that it ended so soon, but I'm nonetheless thankful for the experience. Track 6, Step Aside. So full disclosure, this is another of my favorites. I love the intro with the strings, the piano, and a really sensitive Jay Chou. The performance in general is extremely intimate, and there's literally nothing that I would change. The falsetto and technique overall is at its peak. His falsetto and technique overall is at its peak, and the bridge leading into the chorus is charming enough. It's warm, shiny, and emotional. However, the thing that blew me away was the choruses. Each one was friggin' incredible, dude. Like, he's the most comfortable in his vocal range that I've ever heard him. The guitar melodies coupled with the bass root notes, the gentle drum accompaniment, and you know, the keys highlighting the upper range, you know, but the strings are damn near flawless. The last chorus note with the vocal fry and the vibrato is the tell, the icing on the cake, that the song means the world to Jay. There is phenomenal dynamic range within this recording. The sensitivity of the piano performance, the intricacy of the various harmonies and melodies within the arrangement is out of this world, and there's constant fluctuations that lead to simple concepts never being predictable because of how they're decorated. I swear to God, as I type this, I heard the key change in the outro chorus and I'm in tears because it is so gorgeous. He triumphantly hits that starting note between the repeats and boom, he smacks you in the feels, and the rest of the arrangement soars up to meet him. He triumphantly hits that starting note between the repeats and boom, he smacks you in the feels, and the rest of the arrangement catches up to meet him as he soars. He has finally found his voice, and the world is now his oyster. I am so proud of him. Track 7, Chaotic Dance. After the absolute high that was the previous track, we have Chaotic Dance, and apparently at the time of drafting this, I was having an aneurysm because none of these notes that I wrote make sense. After a lot of reformatting, there's guitarists that appeared with the drums, and the general approach is consistent with a lot of the low-key stuff that we've had from Jay in the past. The vocals are great, the clean leads are present in the mix with the enchanted rapping layers. However, apparently live reviews, Spiderhands thought there was a bit of a weird thing going on with the samples. In the scripting stage, I can only imagine that some context would come from the music video, but some of the confusion may have come from the DJing. With the cutting of samples being a huge component within the song. That said, I am glad that Jay is really pushing what's possible with turntablism within this 5th album, especially considering how much he's previously featured it. I disagree with the points that I made previously about the verses being samey. Honestly, part of this seems like I was overwhelmed by Step Aside and was numbed by how good that was. This track is great too. There's some fun little melodies there with some portamento vibes, and softness to the backing harmony that features alongside the arpeggios in the second verse is lovely. You know, the vocal overdubs in the later half are hella compelling, and the loop's so beautiful. The question I have outside of the turntablism and use of the samples is how do they get it to sound musical? Like, how do they get all these kind of ingredients to sound musical in this mix? I think that the major shift in the last part of the interlude is actually what we needed. The distorted guitars with the cutting at the end sold it for me. Absolute mad lad stuff. Transcendent. Track 8. Struggle. This song did sound like a struggle with filthy sounded distorted riffs, harmonica, the rock drums, and the rock bass. The clean guitar arpeggios on the sides are wonderfully clear in the mix, and Jay sits in the center like a king on his throne, exploring bluesy pentatonic movements like in Her Eyelashes. In fact, there's a great tone to the vocals here, and the song is elevated by Jay's legato passages and rises between the verses and bridges. There are some beautiful natural harmonics too that haven't previously featured within Jay's works, despite guitars being one of the key components within his compositions, and I'll miss them when they're gone. The bass guitar is resonant and charming, the chorus is gritty and sounds as if it is festering, and the desperation communicated throughout the tone of the vocals suits it well. The percussion in general was fitting in every capacity. One of the highlights was the drum fill after the pause at 1:50, which was an absolute masterstroke. Then again, so was the breakdown of the 3:30 part that was just rock guitars with tom fills, and that's enough. Indeed, this was another successful track. Written by Jay within the style. There is a pattern emerging here. I'll say it again, Jay suits this genre, and if he ever wanted to write more stuff like this, he'd nail it. Track 9. Funfair. So like, I wasn't really expecting to have the reverse takes at the start of this track, but it's cool to have these trippy accents once in a while. The strings, guitar, bass, and sample drums, it's all at the same level as the rest of the elements in this album, with careful development that layers throughout the two halves of the verse. The vocals as usual sit really well in the mix, and Jay is continuing to display his prowess as a singer and storyteller. The extra vocal parts in the bridge are stellar, and there's lots to appreciate, especially for those that are fans of Jay's softer works. I think that the rhythmic unison between the piano, guitar, and vocals layers within the second verse are especially effective, because it makes the most of an absence of punchiness within the percussion. There's a consistency dynamically that allows for space for the instruments to breathe, which I don't usually compliment, but they managed to get the compression limiting just right. That said, I have no idea what the song is about. I'm not sure how the reversed glitchy synth layers relate to a funfair. I think that this track scored the way it did within this album purely because it didn't have some of the zazzy quirks that the other songs did. But nevertheless, it's a great track to relax to, so sparkles very well. Track 10, The Wound That Ends War. We've finally made it, the final track of the album, and for this ranking video. To kick things off, we have a fantastically intense piano theme at the start with pencil scribbling away. It's all really engaging off the bat as it transfers back into the 90s R&B hip-hop vibe that's one of Jay's safe spaces, you know. The verse features phenomenal rap flow with an engaging tone to everything. The verse features phenomenal rap flow with an excellent tone to everything overall. There's a slick textural switch between the vocals and the chorus and verses with an octave shift in the piano melody that allows it to simmer on top of the hook lines. It was fantastic for things to just come down and sit for a little bit after at the end after that first chorus. All of this enrichment is made all the more mysterious due to the fact that I don't know what Jay is saying. You know, I can only imagine. The 8th note drum groove with the authoritative bass line featuring alongside the continuous mesmerizing piano motif is utterly hypnotic. And it all comes to a close with Jay leading us out with multiple overlapping rap, chant and clean sections. The filtering of the keys and percussion at the end is an enchanting way to say goodbye to my favorite album from Jay thus far. It has been a fun ride. Conclusion. This is the final of the 5 albums that we're covering in this video, and I've left feeling similarly to how I came into it. I'm happy with this record, but I also feel as though I had a similar overall quality to the previous 2 albums, except with a higher overall average score. It's also worth noting that I found some new favorite tunes such as tracks like Step Aside that scored incredibly highly and blew me away. It's also worth noting that there were no songs below an overall score of 7, which is incredible, really. You've got to show some love for that. Truth be told, it isn't easy to make songs at this level, especially considering that at this point in our ranking trilogy, he's released 5 whole albums worth of material while being relatively consistent throughout. Jay seems to be at his most comfortable within his latest release, and it's technically, at least in terms of overall score, the best release yet. I look forward to what's to come. The overall score for this album, 8.08. My favorite track, Step Aside. At the time of finishing the script for this video, it's 1:30 AM in the morning. I'm tired but glad to have gotten this done. I haven't made a video like this before, but it's sorted now and it's out. It took a year, but I'm hoping that, you know, by the time that it's rendered and released, that I can be proud of it. The lowest ranked song in this video is Basketball Match at an overall score of 6.67. Now you might be thinking, why is it 6.67 if it's least favorite? Well, that's because Jay is a great musician. He doesn't really make weak tracks, he doesn't really write weak songs. From doing the grading here and the scoring, and you can go visit the actual spreadsheet and a link in the video description for more of an idea of the finer details. Jay Chou is a consistently effective musician, and his weakest tracks are simply songs that are mostly good, but are lacking in certain areas that I think he can do better in. I put an image of the lowest ranked tracks here, numbers 40 to 51. I don't think any of these are bad songs, there's just stuff that I've discussed not liking. It's as simple as that, you know. I think that I've been far more in depth with my analysis than I have in the previous reviews. Lord knows how long this video is going to be. It's like 16,000 words at this point. I'll put the rest of the list up in groups of 10 so that you can keep track of them. Please don't take it personally if I have ranked your favorite track lower, because it isn't personal. I used math and averages, so it can't possibly be personal or biased. No siree. It's all logic here for sure, even though I know that I do tend to glide towards the more hard rock stuff. I genuinely thought that Eyelashes would have scored higher on this list. I love that track to bits, but apparently there's stuff here which just scores better. And that's life. Sometimes facts don't respect your feelings, and I'm sure that anyone else who's done clinical review stuff like this would know that truth well. I'm surprised that Struggle was my 3rd favorite. I can't really justify that, but scores are scores. I still like Her Eyelashes better, and there are other songs like Nunchucks and Dragon Fist that I prefer, but maybe not because I scored it better, and it's not like I was giving out points for free. Double Blades, the 2nd placed song, was a surprise too, because when I initially reviewed the track, I couldn't make sense of it. The music video was too nonsensical for me. It distracted me from the tune itself and what was going on within it, to the point where I was expecting to simply dislike hearing it for a second time. However, it scored incredibly highly, and I've got all the love in the world for that. That's a strength of a well-written song. It takes you by surprise. Well done. Step Aside was the highest rated song in this video, and I'm hoping that anyone who sees me as not liking ballads or not being really interested in old school classical stuff is gently humbled by this. My main issue with Jay is that until that song, I hadn't really heard him sing to an equivalent level to the way that he, rapped in his hip-hop stuff or that he crooned in his rock stuff. Step Aside blew my mind. It was unbelievable. I do like ballads, I just need to be impressed. And he succeeded there and then, and it's my favorite Jay Chou tune by far. So yeah, I ranked all 51 songs from the 5 albums. What now? Well, you let me know by commenting on this video, and whether you enjoyed it or not, and I'll reply. But seriously, I enjoyed making this video. Hopefully you enjoyed watching it. If you did, like and subscribe and show it to your friends and family or whoever else, you know. I will do another one of these ranking videos sometime, but not more often than once a month. They take a lot of time and I don't want to half-ass any of them because they need to be special. Remember, I'll be reviewing the 13th Jay Chou album at 8,000 subs, alongside the 14th album at 9,000, and the latest 2022 album at 10k subs. If you want me to check those out, you know what to do. Anyways, again, at the time of this comes out, I will be on holiday, so I'm going to be chilling out, and hopefully you will too. Go join the Spiderhands Discord, link in the description, to chat with me about music. Or go join the Patreon if you want to support the channel or receive custom monthly music reviews. And most importantly, stay cool, shredders. Spiderhands out.